Why would Japan risk everything by attacking the most powerful nation on Earth? In 1941, Japan was running out of oil, facing economic collapse, and believed war with the United States was unavoidable. So they made a decision that shocked the world. On December 7th, Japanese planes roared over Pearl Harbor, unleashing one of the most devastating surprise attacks in history. But instead of crippling America, the attack awakened a sleeping giant. December 7th, 1941. It was a Sunday. It was a quiet Sunday morning at the American naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Most American soldiers were still asleep, some were eating breakfast, but at 7:48 a.m., the familiar, calm sky suddenly turned into a city of death. Hundreds of fighter planes emerged from behind the clouds. The red circles on their wings were the symbol of the Japanese Empire, the rising sun. Without any prior warning or declaration of war, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a devastating attack on the American Pacific Fleet. In just 2 hours, the attack destroyed more than 20 American warships, more than 300 aircraft, and killed about 2,400 American soldiers and civilians. This incident stunned the entire world. The then American President Franklin D. Roosevelt called this day a date which will live in infamy. But the biggest question in history is, why? Why did a small island nation located in a corner of the Pacific Ocean, one of the emerging superpowers of the world at that time, dare to attack a giant like America? Was it just a rash decision? Or was there a history of inevitable conflict that had been building for decades behind it? Today, we will turn the page of that history. We will find out exactly why Japan was forced to attack America. To understand the reason for this attack, we have to go back to the mid-19th century. In 1868, the Meiji Restoration began in Japan. Japan realized that it needed to modernize and industrialize quickly to keep up with Western countries. In just a few decades, Japan transformed from a feudal agrarian society into a modern industrialized nation. Japan surprised the world by winning the Sino-Japanese War in 1894 and the war against the mighty Russia in 1904. They proved that militarily they were no less than the West in any way. But behind this great success of Japan was a major weakness. Japan was essentially a country consisting of a few small volcanic islands. They lacked natural resources. To run modern industry and a strong military, they needed iron, coal, rubber, and, most importantly, fuel oil. But none of these were available in sufficient quantities on Japanese soil. Japan had to import almost all of its needs, 80% of which came from America. Japan's leaders realized that this dependence on others was the biggest obstacle to their imperial expansion. They wanted to create their own colonies like the British and French. Their slogan was Hakoichiu, or the whole world under one roof, the main goal of which was to remove Western influence from Asia and build a huge Asian empire under the leadership of Japan, which was named the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. And in search of these resources, Japan turned its attention to their large and wealthy neighbor, China. 1931. Japan occupied the Chinese province of Manchuria using the pretext of a staged incident. Manchuria was rich in mineral resources. The League of Nations strongly condemned Japan's actions, but Japan withdrew from the League of Nations without paying any attention. Then, in 1937, Japan launched an all-out attack on the Chinese mainland, which is known as the Second Sino-Japanese War. In this war, the Japanese army showed extreme brutality. In horrific incidents like the Nanking Massacre, or Nanking Massacre, millions of innocent Chinese citizens were killed and raped. This brutality of Japan shook the whole world. America, in particular, did not take this Japanese aggression against China very well. In America, then President Franklin D. Roosevelt. America had its own colonies and military interests in the Pacific Ocean, like the Philippines and Guam. If Japan occupied Asia, America's commercial and strategic interests would be under extreme threat. America called on Japan to withdraw from China, but Japan refused, because withdrawing from China meant a great humiliation for the Japanese military and the death of their dream of expanding their empire. Then, America began to use their biggest weapon, economic diplomacy. America gradually began to increase economic pressure on Japan. In 1940, America stopped exporting aircraft parts, aviation fuel, and scrap iron to Japan. Japan used this scrap iron to build its warships and weapons. At this time, World War II had begun in Europe. Hitler's Nazi Germany had occupied France. Taking advantage of this, Japan occupied French Indochina, present-day Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia in September 1940. Their goal was to advance towards Southeast Asia. America's patience was now completely broken. In July 1941, America took a step that changed history forever. President Roosevelt confiscated or froze all Japanese bank accounts and assets in America. And he struck the biggest blow. He imposed a complete ban on oil exports to Japan, or oil embargo. Great Britain and the Netherlands also supported America and imposed the same ban on Japan. For Japan, this was a death warrant. No modern army could survive without oil. After the American embargo, Japan's army and navy could last for at most another year or a year and a half with the oil reserves it had. Japan's clock was running out. Tick, tick, tick. By the end of 1941, Japan had only two options open to it. The first option, accept America's terms and withdraw troops from China and Indochina. But doing so would forever end Japan's dream of becoming a superpower and would lead to rebellions among extremist military officers within the country. The second option, war. If America did not give it oil, it would seize the oil by force. The Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia, and British Malaysia, located in Southeast Asia, had a lot of oil and rubber. Japan decided that they would attack south and seize those oil fields. But there was a huge obstacle to this second option. The American Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. If Japan attacked Southeast Asia, the American fleet would attack them from the side. So Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Japanese Navy, came up with a terrible and daring plan. Yamamoto had studied in America and was a student at Harvard University. He knew very well that Japan could never win a long-term war with a huge industrial power like America. But his plan was different, a preemptive strike. His plan was to suddenly attack Pearl Harbor and destroy the entire American fleet in an instant. This would cripple America for at least 1 to 2 years. During this time, Japan would occupy all of Southeast Asia and create a strong military ring around itself that would be impossible for America to break. As a result, America was forced to make a peace treaty with Japan instead of going to war. Finally, that day came. In the last week of November 1941, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers sailed across the North Pacific Ocean towards Hawaii in complete radio silence. American radar and intelligence did not detect a single detail. And then, December 7th, 1941. More than 350 Japanese warplanes crashed into Pearl Harbor. From a strategic perspective, the Pearl Harbor attack was a masterpiece. It was one of the most successful surprise attacks in history, but in the long run, it was the biggest and most fatal mistake in Japanese history. Admiral Yamamoto's fears ultimately came true. After the attack, he reportedly said, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. I fear we may have awakened a sleeping giant and driven it mad with a terrible desire for revenge. Japan thought that America would cower in fear after this attack, but the opposite happened. The attack on Pearl Harbor, which had kept America out of the war in Europe for so long, united the divided American people overnight. The next day, President Roosevelt declared war on Japan. By drawing America into the war, the tide of World War II turned completely. Japan's hunger for wealth and blind desire for empire expansion forced them to attack Pearl Harbor. But this one attack ultimately led to the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the final collapse of the Japanese Empire. This incident in history reminds us how excessive aggression and arrogance of power can bring destruction to a nation. That's it for today. Subscribe to our channel to know more such unknown and detailed information about history. See you in the next video. Thank you.